I should have known the barbecue would be a disaster when Clara spent 3 hours getting ready for my sister's backyard party. 3 hours. For hamburgers and potato salad with people she claimed to barely tolerate. Martin, are you seriously wearing that? Clara stood in our bedroom doorway, arms crossed, looking like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine, which, knowing her obsession with her image as the town's premier Pilates instructor, was probably the goal. I glanced down at my khakis and polo shirt. What's wrong with this? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nothing if you're planning to blend into the lawn furniture. She adjusted her designer sundress for the 15th time. I swear, sometimes I wonder why I married someone so comfortable with mediocrity. The barb hit its mark, as usual. After 15 years of marriage, Clara had turned passive aggression into an art form. I grabbed my keys without responding, knowing anything I said would just give her more ammunition. Lisa's backyard was already packed when we arrived. My sister had invited half the neighborhood, including our next-door neighbor, Julia Scott, who waved from the garden where she was admiring Lisa's new rose bushes. Julia was one of those genuinely nice people who made you feel heard when you talked to her. The kind of person Clara dismissed as boring because she didn't spend her evenings gossiping about everyone in town. Martin! Lisa hugged me tight. Clara, you look amazing as always. Love that dress. Thanks, it's new. Clara immediately launched into a detailed description of where she'd bought it and how much it cost, because heaven forbid anyone think she shopped at discount stores like the rest of us mortals. I escaped to help with the grill, where I found myself standing next to Brent Holloway, the manager of Clara's gym. Brent was one of those guys who probably practiced his smile in the mirror and thought protein powder was a food group. He'd shown up uninvited, claiming Lisa had mentioned the party to someone who'd mentioned it to him. Hey there, Martin. Brent's handshake was unnecessarily firm. Clara tells me you teach shop class at the high school. That must be fulfilling. The way he said fulfilling made it sound like I collected garbage for a living. Someone has to teach kids actual skills, useful things they can't learn from a smartphone. Right. Very noble. Brent's attention was already drifting toward Clara, who was holding court near the picnic table with her usual audience of admirers. I watched as he made his way over to her, and something twisted in my stomach when I saw how her face lit up. Not the polite smile she gave everyone else, but genuine pleasure. The kind of expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The afternoon crawled by with painful predictability. Clara made sure everyone knew about her latest certification, her growing client list, and her plans to expand the studio. When someone asked about my work, she jumped in before I could answer. Oh, Martin's perfectly happy teaching teenagers how to use power tools. No ambition whatsoever, but he's consistent. She laughed like it was a charming quirk instead of a calculated insult. Sometimes I think he was born without whatever gene makes people want to improve themselves. The conversation around us faltered. Even Mrs. Dalrymple, the neighborhood's premier gossip, looked uncomfortable. But Clara was just getting started. Honestly, I don't know how he's satisfied with so little. I mean, we're in our 40s. Shouldn't we want more by now? She gestured vaguely at the assembled crowd. Anyone want my husband? He comes with very low expectations and a complete inability to take hints. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt heat creep up my neck as every eye turned toward me, waiting for my response. Clara stood there with that same bright smile, as if she'd just offered someone a piece of cake instead of publicly humiliating her husband. That's when Julia stepped forward. I'll take him. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. He's kind, he's intelligent, and he actually listens when people talk. So Martin, what time are you picking me up tomorrow? The entire party seemed to hold its breath. I looked at Julia, really looked at her, and saw something I'd almost forgotten existed. Genuine warmth. No calculation, no hidden agenda, just a decent person stepping in to save me from complete mortification. 8 sharp, I heard myself say. Wear something green. It's your color. Julia smiled. Perfect. I'll bring coffee. Clara's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, and finally something that might have been panic. Her friends Tina and Meg exchanged glances that could have powered the neighborhood. Mrs. Dalrymple looked like Christmas had come early. Very funny, Clara said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. Martin doesn't have the backbone for something like that. Maybe you should have thought of that before you put him on the market, Julia replied sweetly. I happen to like men with backbones. And basic decency. The party began to break up shortly after that, with clusters of people whispering as they gathered their things. I found myself helping Julia carry some dishes to her car, grateful for an excuse to escape the toxic cloud that seemed to follow my wife. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Julia loaded a casserole dish into her back seat. "Nobody deserves to be talked to like that, especially not in public. Your wife has a cruel streak, Martin. You know that, right?" I did know it. I'd known it for years, but had convinced myself it was just Clara's way of pushing me to be better. Except I was beginning to realize that nothing I did would ever be enough for her. "You don't actually have to pick me up tomorrow," Julia said gently. "I just wanted to give you an out." "What if I want to pick you up tomorrow?" She studied my face for a long moment. "Then I'll be ready at 8. But Martin, you're not sleeping in that house tonight. Clara's going to be furious, and you don't deserve whatever she's planning to dish out." As if summoned by her words, I spotted Clara and Brent near the garage, standing closer together than any married woman should stand with another man. Clara's hand was on his arm, and she was looking up at him with an expression I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Adoration. "Jesus," I whispered. "I'm sorry," Julia said softly. "I hoped I was wrong." "How long have you known?" "I've seen his car in your driveway when you're at school. And Clara, she's not as subtle as she thinks she is." I watched my wife laugh at something Brent said, watched her lean into him like she belonged there. 15 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with a fight or a conversation, but with me standing in my sister's driveway, finally seeing what everyone else had apparently noticed months ago. "Come on," Julia said, touching my arm gently. "You can crash on my couch tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Clara in my rearview mirror. She was watching us leave, and for the first time in years, she looked genuinely worried. Good. It was about time. Julia's house smelled like coffee and vanilla, a stark contrast to the perpetual scent of expensive perfume and gym equipment that had taken over my own home. She handed me a beer and settled into the chair across from her couch, maintaining a respectful distance while still making it clear I was welcome. "How long?" I asked, taking a long pull from the bottle. I first noticed Brent's car about 3 months ago. At first I thought maybe he was just dropping off work stuff, but then I realized the pattern. Always when you were at school, always for at least 2 hours. 3 months. I tried to think back, looking for signs I'd missed. Clara had been working late more often, claiming she needed to reorganize the studio's schedule. She'd started a new workout routine that required special equipment, only available at the gym. She'd even suggested I take up a hobby to fill my evenings. "I'm an idiot," I said. "No, you're trusting. There's a difference." Julia curled her legs under her. Though I have to say, after today's performance, I'm wondering if this is the first time she's cheated or just the first time she's been sloppy about it. That thought hit like a punch to the gut. How many other Brents had there been? How many times had Clara come home to me after being with someone else? "I need to ask you something," Julia said carefully, "and I want you to know I debated whether to show you this. But after what happened today, I think you deserve to know exactly who you're dealing with." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages before handing it to me. Clara added me to a group chat with her gym friends about 2 months ago. I think she was trying to make me feel included in the neighborhood social circle. She probably forgot I was in the group. The message thread was titled Girls' Night Tea and contained exactly the kind of gossip and judgment I'd expected from Clara's crowd. But as I scrolled through recent messages, my pressure started climbing. "Clara, can't believe how easy this is. M is so oblivious." "Tina, you're playing with fire, girl." "Clara, please. He's too comfortable to rock the boat. Besides, B is everything M isn't. Ambitious, fit, knows how to treat a woman." "Meg, what if he finds out?" "Clara, he won't. And even if he did, what's he going to do? He doesn't have the spine to leave me, and he definitely doesn't have the imagination to fight back." "Clara, broken the new workout bench today, M will never know what he's been sleeping next to." I handed the phone back, my hands shaking slightly. "She's been using our house." "I'm sorry, Martin. I know this is awful." "No." I stood up, pacing to the window. "Awful was what she did at the barbecue. This is clarifying." The rage I'd been suppressing for months was finally finding its target. Not just anger at the betrayal, but fury at the sheer disrespect of it all. She'd been using our home, our bed, to cheat on me, and then had the audacity to publicly humiliate me for not being ambitious enough. "She thinks I don't have a spine," I said, more to myself than to Julia. "Martin, no, this is good. She's underestimated me completely." I turned back to Julia. "Can you forward me those screenshots? I'm going to need evidence." What are you thinking? I'm thinking Clara's about to learn that being comfortable doesn't mean being weak, and that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should worry about most. The next morning, I was waiting outside my lawyer's office when it opened. Tom Bradley had handled my sister's divorce 3 years earlier, and he'd earned his reputation for being thorough and creative. "Martin Quinn," he said, shaking my hand. "Lisa said you might be coming by. What can I do for you?" I laid out the situation methodically, the public humiliation, the affair, the group chat messages, and Julia's observations about Brent's car. Tom took notes, occasionally asking for clarification. "The good news is, Massachusetts is a no-fault state, so the adultery won't affect the divorce proceedings directly," he said when I finished. "The bad news is that after 15 years, she's entitled to half of everything unless we can prove she's been hiding assets or deliberately damaging the marriage." "What if we can prove both?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Clara's been using our house for her affairs. That's got to be some kind of marital misconduct, right? And I want to file today, with yesterday's date as the official separation date." "Why yesterday, specifically?" "Because that's when she publicly offered to give me away in front of half the neighborhood. I'd say that's a pretty clear indication she considers the marriage over." Tom grinned. "I like the way you think. Let me draw up the papers. But Martin, if you're serious about this, you need to be prepared for war. Clara's going to fight dirty." Good thing I've been taking notes. I spent the rest of the morning at the bank, opening a new account and transferring exactly half of our joint savings. Legal, but it would definitely get Clara's attention. Then I drove to the house to pack some clothes and gather evidence. The place felt different now, contaminated somehow. I found myself looking at our bed, our couch, even the kitchen counter with new eyes, wondering what I'd missed. In Clara's gym bag, I discovered a second phone I'd never seen before. The phone was password protected, but Clara had never been creative with her passwords. Her birthday worked on the third try. What I found made my stomach turn. Months of explicit messages with Brent, including photos I definitely didn't want to see. But more than that, there were conversations about me that revealed just how little respect my wife had for our marriage. "Brent, when are you going to leave him?" Clara, "Why would I leave him? He pays half the bills and never questions where I go. I get stability and freedom." Brent, "Seems unfair to the guy." Clara, "Martin chose to be mediocre. I chose not to be dragged down with him. Besides, he's too scared of change to ever do anything about it." I screenshot everything before putting the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Clara thought she had me figured out, thought I was too comfortable and scared to disrupt our life. She was about to learn how wrong she was. At school that afternoon, word of the BBQ incident had already spread. Small towns are like that. Gossip travels faster than wildfire. My students, bless them, pretended not to know anything, but I caught the sympathetic looks and hushed conversations. "Mr. Quinn?" Sarah Martinez, one of my best students, lingered after class. "Are you okay? I mean, my mom was at the barbecue yesterday and she said..." "I'm fine, Sarah. Sometimes life throws you curveballs, but that's what makes it interesting. My dad says when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them." "Your dad sounds like a smart man. He also says the best revenge is living well." I smiled at that. "Your dad's right about a lot of things, but sometimes living well requires making some changes first." That evening, I met my sister for dinner at Murphy's, the local dive bar where the beer was cheap and the gossip was free. Lisa was already waiting in a corner booth, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "I still can't believe she said that," Lisa said before I'd even sat down, in front of everyone. "I was so embarrassed for you." "Don't be embarrassed. Be angry." "Oh, I am. Trust me." She took a sip of her wine. "So what's the plan? Please tell me you have a plan." I filled her in on the lawyer, the bank account, and the phone discovery. Lisa's eyes got wider with each revelation. "She's been cheating in your house? Martin, that's sociopathic." "That's Clara. Always has been. I just convinced myself it was ambition." "So what happens now?" "Now she gets served with divorce papers. And then we see exactly how much backbone she thinks I have." As if summoned by our conversation, Mrs. Dalrymple appeared at our table. The woman had a sixth sense for drama. "Martin, dear, I hope you don't mind me saying, but what happened yesterday was just awful. Simply awful." "Thank you, Mrs. Dalrymple. And I hope you know that some of us have been wondering about that young man from the gym. Brent, is it? He's been around the neighborhood quite a bit lately. Very friendly with some of the married ladies." Lisa and I exchanged glances. "Really?" "Oh yes, I've seen his car at the Morrison place when Bill's at work. And the Hendersons when Rick's traveling. That boy gets around, if you know what I mean. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. So Brent wasn't just sleeping with my wife, he was working his way through the neighborhood's unhappy housewives. That was information I could definitely use. Mrs. Dalrymple, you've always been very observant. If you ever notice anything else interesting, I'd appreciate a heads up. Of course, dear. Us neighbors have to look out for each other. After she left, Lisa stared at me. You're planning something devious, aren't you? I'm planning something fair. Clara wants to play games, fine, but she's about to learn that I've been watching and learning for 15 years, and unlike her, I actually pay attention to details. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. How did today go? Better than expected, I replied. Still on for coffee tomorrow, wouldn't miss it. And Martin, whatever you're planning, just remember, the best revenge is the kind that leaves them wondering how they never saw it coming. I smiled as I put my phone away. Julia was right. Clara thought she knew me, thought she had me categorized and controlled. Tomorrow she was going to start learning just how wrong she was, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. The divorce papers were served at Clara's gym during her Tuesday morning Pilates class. I knew this because I'd specifically requested it, and because Mrs. Henderson called me within an hour to give me a play-by-play. She went white as a sheet, Mrs. Henderson reported gleefully. Just stood there holding the papers while her whole class watched. Then she started crying and ran to the bathroom. Very dramatic. I'm sure it was quite a shock, I said, trying to sound sympathetic while internally celebrating. Oh, and that Brent fellow was there too. He followed her to the bathroom, which caused quite a stir. People are starting to put two and two together, if you know what I mean. I knew exactly what she meant. The neighborhood gossip network was more efficient than the internet, and Clara's carefully maintained image was about to crumble in real time. My phone had been buzzing all morning with increasingly frantic texts from Clara. What the hell is this? Call me now. You can't be serious. We need to talk, Martin. Don't be an idiot. I ignored them all. Clara had spent months treating me like I was invisible. Now she could see how it felt. At lunch, I met Julia at the coffee shop on Main Street. She was already waiting at a corner table, looking effortlessly put together in a way that Clara achieved only through hours of preparation. You look like a man with a plan, she said as I sat down. I look like a man whose wife just got served with divorce papers in front of her Pilates class. Julia nearly choked on her coffee. You didn't. I absolutely did. And according to my sources, Brent's reaction was almost as entertaining as hers. Poor Brent. He probably thought he was just getting some fun on the side. Now he's about to become the center of a very public scandal. That's what happens when you mess with other people's lives. Actions have consequences. Julia studied my face. You're different. Yesterday you seemed hurt and angry. Today you seem focused, dangerous. She wasn't wrong. Something had shifted overnight. The hurt was still there, but it was buried under a cold determination to make sure Clara understood exactly what she'd thrown away and exactly what it was going to cost her. The town festival is this Saturday, I said. Are you going? I wasn't planning on it. Why? Because I think it would be nice if we went together. As friends, of course. Julia's smile was slow and knowing. Of course, just friends. Should I wear something that will photograph well? Green, I said, remembering my promise from the barbecue. Definitely wear green. The rest of the week passed in a blur of legal meetings and strategic planning. Tom Bradley was proving to be worth every penny, especially when it came to the more creative aspects of divorce warfare. I've been doing some research on your friend Brent, he said during our Thursday meeting. Turns out he's got some interesting financial arrangements. 3 different women have been paying for his personal training services in cash, including your wife. Large amounts of cash. How large? Large enough that the IRS might be interested in his tax reporting, or lack thereof. I felt that cold smile again. You think Clara's been giving him money? I think Clara's been giving him a lot of things. The question is whether she's been using joint marital funds to do it. By Friday evening, I had my answer. A little detective work revealed that Clara had been withdrawing money from our joint account for months, always in amounts just under the bank's reporting threshold. She'd been funding her affair with our savings. That night, she finally came home. I was sitting in the living room, reading, when she walked in looking like she'd been through a war. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. Martin, please. I know you're hurt, but this doesn't have to be ugly. I looked up from my book. Ugly? Clara, you've been cheating on me for months, using our house and our money to do it, and then you publicly humiliated me in front of our friends and neighbors. We're way past ugly. I never meant for you to find out like this. You never meant for me to find out at all. There's a difference. She sat down across from me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, uncertain, almost human. I made mistakes, she said quietly, but we can work through this. We've been together for 15 years. 15 years that apparently meant nothing to you. That's not true. Really? Because according to your text messages, I'm a mediocre, spineless loser who's too scared to leave you? Did I miss something? Her face went pale. You read my messages? I read everything, Clara. The group chat, the phone you thought I didn't know about, the bank records, all of it. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. Or were anyway. She stood up, and I could see her shifting tactics, trying to find an angle that would work. Fine. You want a divorce? I'll give you a divorce. But I want half of everything. The house, your pension, your savings, all of it. You already spent half our savings on your boyfriend. That's not $12,000, Clara. $12,000 in cash withdrawals over the past 4 months. Want to explain where that money went? For the first time since I'd known her, Clara looked genuinely scared. I can explain. Save it for your lawyer. You're going to need a good one. She left that night, and I haven't seen her since. But I knew Saturday would be different. The town festival was Clara's chance to control the narrative, to paint herself as the victim of a vindictive husband. She wouldn't be able to resist. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for the annual Millbrook Fall Festival. Julia picked me up at 8 sharp, wearing a green sundress that made her eyes look like emeralds. She'd brought coffee and pastries from the bakery, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. Ready for this? She asked as we walked toward the town green. I've been ready for this my whole life. I just didn't know it. The festival was already crowded when we arrived. Local vendors had set up booths selling everything from handmade crafts to kettle corn, and a small stage hosted local musicians. It was the kind of wholesome community event that Clara usually dismissed as small-town nonsense, but I'd always enjoyed. We'd been there maybe 20 minutes when I spotted her. Clara was holding court near the face-painting booth, surrounded by her usual crowd of admirers. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's car payments, and she was playing the role of tragic victim to the hilt. There she is, Julia said quietly. Right on schedule. She can't resist an audience. We made our way closer, not trying to hide, but not making a scene either. I wanted Clara to see us together, but I wanted it to look natural, effortless, like Julia and I belonged together. It didn't take long. Tina spotted us first and whispered something to Clara, whose head snapped around like she'd been slapped. For a moment, our eyes met across the crowd, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Martin! She broke away from her group and marched toward us, her face a mask of wounded dignity. I see you've wasted no time moving on. Hello, Clara. You look dramatic. This is really how you want to handle this? Parading your rebound around in public? Julia stepped closer to me, a subtle but clear statement of solidarity. I'm not a rebound, Clara. I'm an upgrade. The gathered crowd, because of course people were watching, let out a collective gasp. Clara's face flushed red. You have no idea what you're getting into, Clara said to Julia. He's weak, he's boring, and he has zero ambition. Good luck with that. Funny, Julia replied calmly. I was just thinking how refreshing it is to be with a man who doesn't need to tear others down to feel good about himself. Oh, please. You think you know him? Martin's the kind of man who settles for teaching high school shop class because he's too scared to try for anything better. That's when I decided I'd heard enough. You're right, Clara, I said loudly enough for the growing crowd to hear. I am comfortable with my life. I like teaching kids useful skills. I like our quiet neighborhood. I like having friends who don't spend their time gossiping about everyone else's business. I paused, letting the words sink in. What I don't like is being married to someone who thinks loyalty is a weakness and integrity is boring. Don't you dare try to make this about integrity? Why not? It seems relevant. After all, some of us have been faithful to our marriage vows, and some of us have been screwing the gym manager in the marital bed. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara looked around at the crowd of neighbors and friends, all of whom were now staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. That's not... You can't just what? Tell the truth? Because that's what happened, isn't it? You've been having an affair with Brent for months, using our house, our money, our marriage as a cover story while you figured out your next move. Mrs. Dalrymple chose that moment to materialize beside us. Oh my, she said with theatrical concern. Is that why that young man's car has been in your driveway so often? I did wonder. Clara's support system began to crumble in real time. Tina and Meg exchanged uncomfortable glances and started backing away from the confrontation. Other neighbors were whispering among themselves, putting together pieces of gossip they'd been collecting for months. That's when Brent himself appeared, probably summoned by someone's text message. He strutted over like he was riding to Clara's rescue, all protein shake confidence and gym-sculpted swagger. "Hey now," he said, putting a possessive hand on Clara's shoulder. "Let's all just calm down here." "Brent," I said with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Perfect timing. I was just telling everyone about your special training sessions with my wife. Very hands-on approach, from what I understand." "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Of course you don't. Trouble is bad for business, isn't it? Especially when you're running a cash-only operation with married clients." Brent's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." $12,000, Brent. That's what Clara's paid you over the past 4 months. I'm sure the IRS would love to hear about your innovative payment structure." The crowd was growing larger, drawn by the drama unfolding on the town green. Clara looked around desperately, realizing that her carefully constructed image was collapsing in front of everyone she'd spent years trying to impress. "You're pathetic," she hissed at me. "This is exactly why Why you what? Why you cheated? Why you stole our money? Why you publicly humiliated me last weekend?" I stepped closer, and for the first time in our marriage, Clara actually backed down. "No, Clara. This is exactly why you're about to lose everything." Brent tried to salvage the situation by getting aggressive. "You need to back off, man. Clara's been through enough." "Has she? Because from where I'm standing, Clara's been having the time of her life. It's everyone else who's been suffering." That's when Brent made his mistake. He stepped toward me, chest puffed out, trying to use his size to intimidate me. What he didn't know was that 15 years of teaching high school had taught me how to handle bullies. I didn't back down. Instead, I smiled and raised my voice just enough for the crowd to hear. "Careful, Brent. Assault charges would really complicate your immigration status, wouldn't they?" It was a complete guess, but the way Brent's face went white told me I'd hit the mark. He stepped back, hands raised. "I'm not looking for a fight." "Good, because you couldn't afford one." Julia chose that moment to slip her arm through mine. "Ready to go get some apple cider? I think we've provided enough entertainment for one afternoon." As we walked away, I could hear Clara trying to salvage the situation, explaining to anyone who would listen that I was bitter and vindictive, that she was the real victim. But the damage was done. The whispered conversations, the judgmental looks, the way her friends were suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere, Clara's social standing in Millbrook was finished. "That was brutal," Julia said when we were out of earshot. "That was justice. Think it's over?" I looked back at Clara, who was now standing alone except for Brent, looking lost and desperate in the middle of the festival she'd once commanded. Not even close. That was just the opening act. Clara's retaliation came sooner than I expected. I was at school Monday morning when Tom Bradley called with news that made me freeze. "She's claiming you hid assets," he said without preamble. "Filed a motion alleging that you've been secretly moving money and that the divorce papers were served under false pretenses. That's rich, considering she's the one who stole $12,000. Gets better. She's also claiming emotional abuse and demanding spousal support. Says you've been psychologically manipulating her for years." I had to laugh. Psychological manipulation? I can barely get her to pass the SALT without a lecture about my communication skills. "Martin, I need you to understand something. Clara's playing hardball now. She's scared, and scared people do desperate things." He was right to warn me. When I got home that afternoon, I found my front door standing open and Clara's car in the driveway. She wasn't supposed to be there. The restraining order Tom had filed specifically prohibited her from entering the house without my permission. I called the police before going inside. "Millbrook Police, Officer Martinez speaking. This is Martin Quinn at 47 Elm Street. I need to report a break-in. My estranged wife is in my house in violation of a restraining order." "We'll send a unit right over, Mr. Quinn. Are you in any immediate danger?" I could hear Clara moving around upstairs, probably in our bedroom. "I don't think so, but she's not supposed to be here." "Stay outside until we arrive, sir." I waited on the front lawn, watching through the windows as Clara moved from room to room. She wasn't just looking around, she was taking things. I could see her stuffing items into garbage bags with the efficiency of a professional thief. Officer Martinez turned out to be Sarah's older brother, Rico. He'd graduated from my shop class about 8 years earlier and had always been a good kid. "Mr. Quinn," he said, shaking my hand, "sorry about this situation. Can you walk me through what's happening?" I explained about the divorce, the restraining order, and Clara's current unauthorized shopping spree. Rico took notes and called for backup before approaching the house. "Mrs. Quinn?" he called through the open door. This is Officer Martinez with the Millbrook Police. I need you to come outside, please." Clara appeared at the top of the stairs, looking like she'd been caught shoplifting. She was holding a garbage bag full of what I assumed were her belongings, but I could see the corner of my laptop case sticking out. "Officer, thank goodness you're here," she said, switching instantly to victim mode. "My husband has been threatening me, and I just came to get my things." "Ma'am, do you have permission to be in this house?" "It's my house, too. We're married." "Actually, ma'am, there's a restraining order that says otherwise. I'm going to need you to come outside." The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in Clara's manipulation tactics. She cried, she pleaded, she claimed I was being vindictive and cruel. She painted herself as a helpless victim who just wanted her personal belongings. What she didn't count on was Rico being thorough. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to check that bag," he said politely but firmly. "This is harassment. Ma'am, you're in violation of a court order. I'm trying to handle this as quietly as possible, but I need to see what you're taking from the house." The bag contained Clara's jewelry, some clothes, and several items that definitely weren't hers. My laptop, a tablet, our digital camera, and a folder of financial documents. "These aren't personal belongings, ma'am," Rico said. "Those are mine, too. The laptop is registered to Martin Quinn. The financial documents appear to be joint accounts, which means you can't remove them without permission." Clara's mask finally slipped completely. "This is ridiculous. He's trying to destroy me, and you're helping him do it. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave the premises. If you return without permission, you'll be arrested for trespassing." After Clara left, Rico helped me inventory what she'd tried to take. It was more extensive than I'd realized. She'd been systematically going through the house, taking anything of value that wasn't nailed down. "She's desperate," Rico observed. "People don't usually try this unless they're really worried about money." She should be worried. Turns out adultery is expensive. "Mr. Quinn, can I give you some advice? Change your locks tonight, and maybe invest in a security system. This probably isn't over." He was right. I called a locksmith that evening and had new lock bolts installed on all the doors. I also ordered a Ring doorbell system and several security cameras. If Clara wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had evidence of every move she made. The cameras proved their worth sooner than expected. Wednesday night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. The Ring app showed Brent's car pulling into my driveway with Clara in the passenger seat. I watched from my bedroom window as they approached the house, clearly expecting to find it empty. Clara tried her key first, then looked confused when it didn't work. Brent produced what looked like a crowbar from his trunk. That's when I called 911. "This is Martin Quinn at 47 Elm Street. 2 people are attempting to break into my house. I have them on security camera." "Are you in the house, sir?" "Yes, upstairs. They're trying to force the front door." "Stay where you are. Units are en route." I kept recording as Brent worked on the door. Clara was acting as a lookout, which meant this wasn't a spontaneous decision. They'd planned this. The question was what they thought they were going to find. The police arrived just as Brent managed to force the door open. The look on his face when the patrol car's spotlight hit him was priceless. Pure panic mixed with the dawning realization that he'd just committed a felony. Clara tried to run, but there's nowhere to hide in a suburban neighborhood at 2 a.m. Officer Martinez had her in handcuffs within 50 yards of my front door. "This is my house," she screamed as they loaded her into the patrol car. "He's my husband." "Not anymore," I called from my front porch, "and definitely not after this." Brent was charged with breaking and entering, possession of burglary tools, and violation of a restraining order. Clara got hit with conspiracy, accessory charges, and her own restraining order violation. Both were held overnight, which meant their mugshots would be in the local paper. The next morning, Tom Bradley called with an update that made the whole ordeal worthwhile. "The attempted burglary just ruined Clara's credibility completely," he said. "Her lawyer called this morning wanting to discuss settlement options. Apparently, Clara's starting to realize that her legal bills are going to exceed any settlement she might get." "What kind of settlement are we talking about?" "She keeps the car and her personal belongings. You keep the house, your pension, and what's left of the savings account. She gets nothing else." "What about spousal support?" "What about it? She's got a job, no kids, and she just got arrested trying to burglarize your house. No judge in the state would award her alimony." I felt that cold satisfaction again. Clara had overplayed her hand completely. Her greed and desperation had turned what could have been a messy but manageable divorce into a complete disaster. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I drove to the gym where Clara and Brent worked. The owner, Mike Torino, was a decent guy who'd built the business from nothing over the past 10 years. He deserved to know what kind of employees he'd been harboring. "Martin," he said, looking genuinely sympathetic, "I heard about the break-in. I'm really sorry this happened." "Thanks, Mike. Actually, that's why I'm here. I thought you should know that the break-in was committed by 2 of your employees. Mike's face went pale. Clara and Brent? Clara and Brent. They were arrested last night trying to burglarize my house. I thought you'd want to know before the story hits the paper. Jesus. I mean, I knew they were close, but I had no idea it had gone this far. I handed him a folder containing printouts of the security camera footage, the police report, and some of the more damning text messages between Clara and Brent. There's something else you should know, I said. Brent's been running a cash-only side business with some of your female clients, personal training sessions that weren't exactly about fitness. Mike flipped through the documents, his expression growing darker by the page. How many clients? At least 3 that I know of, probably more. This could destroy my business. If word gets out that I was employing people who were using my gym for prostitution, it doesn't have to destroy your business. But you need to act fast, and you need to be very public about it. Mike fired both Clara and Brent that afternoon, effective immediately. He also called the police to report the cash payments and potential tax evasion. By evening, the story was all over social media, with Mike positioning himself as the victim of employee misconduct rather than an enabler. Clara's world was collapsing in real time. She'd lost her job, her reputation, her marriage, and now faced potential criminal charges. Brent was in even worse shape. His work visa was tied to his employment, and his arrest record was about to make him unemployable. But the best part was yet to come. Friday evening, I was having dinner with Julia when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Dalrymple, practically vibrating with excitement. Martin, dear, you need to turn on Channel 7 right now. They're doing a story about the gym scandal, and they're interviewing some of Brent's other clients. I turned on the news just in time to see a reporter standing outside Mike's gym, explaining how a personal training scam had been uncovered. 3 different women were interviewed, all of whom had paid Brent cash for services that went well beyond fitness instruction. The reporter didn't name Clara specifically, but she didn't need to. Everyone in town knew who Brent's most prominent client was. This is beautiful, Julia said, watching Clara's entire social circle implode on live television. This is justice, I replied. Clara thought she could humiliate me publicly and get away with it. Now she knows how it feels. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I showed the message to Julia, who shook her head in amazement. She still doesn't get it, Julia said. She destroyed her own life. You just made sure everyone could see it. I typed back, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending your behavior was acceptable. The response came immediately. This isn't over. I smiled as I deleted the message. Clara was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But she was about to learn that threatening me was the biggest mistake she could make, because I was just getting started. Clara's threat turned out to be more than empty bluster. The next week brought a series of petty harassments that would have been almost funny if they weren't so pathetic. Someone, and I had a pretty good idea who, kept calling in noise complaints about my house to the police. My car tires were slashed twice. Someone threw eggs at my front windows. The problem for Clara was that I now had security cameras recording everything. She's really lost it, Officer Martinez said, reviewing the footage of Clara sneaking across my lawn at 3 a.m. with a carton of eggs. This is stalking behavior, Mr. Quinn. We can arrest her for this. Not yet, I said. I want to see how far she's willing to go. The answer came the following Saturday. I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for a deck project when my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. Something big was happening. Julia called while I was driving home. Martin, you need to see Facebook right now. Clara's posted something. Well, it's something. I pulled over and opened the app. Clara had written what could only be described as a manifesto, a 2,000-word screed about emotional abuse, manipulation, and how I'd systematically destroyed her self-esteem over 15 years of marriage. She painted herself as a victim who'd only turned to Brent for comfort and support. The post was getting dozens of comments, most of them from people who clearly didn't know the full story. Clara's version of events made me sound like a controlling monster who'd driven his poor wife to seek solace elsewhere. But Clara had made one crucial mistake. She'd posted it publicly, which meant everyone could see it, including people who knew the truth. Mrs. Dalrymple was the first to respond. Interesting story, Clara. Too bad the security cameras tell a different version. That opened the floodgates. Julia posted screenshots of Clara's group chat messages. Mike Torino shared the police report from the break-in. Even some of Clara's former friends started sharing their own stories about her behavior. Within an hour, Clara's attempt at public vindication had turned into a public execution. The comments section became a catalog of her lies, manipulations, and betrayals. People were sharing stories I'd never heard, about how Clara had spread rumors about other neighbors, how she'd tried to steal clients from other fitness instructors, how she'd been cruel to people she considered beneath her social status. The coup de grace came from an unexpected source, Brent himself. Apparently facing deportation and criminal charges, Brent had decided to cooperate with authorities. He posted his own response to Clara's manifesto, complete with screenshots of their text conversations that showed Clara as the aggressor in their affair. Clara pursued me for months, he wrote. She told me her marriage was over and that her husband was abusive. She paid me to keep quiet about our relationship and promised to leave him once the divorce was final. I was stupid to believe her, but I'm not going to let her destroy my life to save hers. The screenshots were devastating, Clara describing me as pathetic and easy to manipulate, Clara bragging about using our joint account to pay for hotel rooms, Clara planning how to maximize her divorce settlement while minimizing my share, but the worst part was a conversation from just 2 weeks earlier where Clara outlined her plan to claim I'd been abusive in order to get a better settlement. I'll say he threatened me, she'd written. Small-town judges always believe the woman in these cases. I'll get the house and alimony, and he'll be lucky to keep his job. The Facebook post was shared hundreds of times. By evening, it had reached people in neighboring towns who didn't even know Clara personally but were fascinated by the train wreck unfolding in real time. Clara deleted the post around midnight, but the internet is forever. Screenshots were already circulating, and the damage was irreversible. Sunday morning brought a knock at my door. I opened it to find Clara standing on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed, her makeup was smudged, and she was wearing sweatpants, something I'd never seen her do in public. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't. You have a restraining order, remember?" "Please, Martin, 5 minutes. I'll stand right here on the porch." Against my better judgment, I stepped outside, making sure to stay within range of my security cameras. "I want to call a truce," she said. "This has gotten out of hand." "Has it? Because from where I'm standing, this is exactly what you deserve." "I made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes, Clara. You made choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to steal our money. You chose to humiliate me in public. You chose to break into my house. Every single thing that's happened to you is a direct result of your own actions." "I know you're angry." "I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. You wanted to know what I was capable of when pushed? Now you know." Tears started streaming down her face, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "My job, my friends, my reputation. I can't even go to the grocery store without people staring at me." "Good. Maybe now you understand how I felt when you offered to give me away at that barbecue." "That was just a joke." "No, Clara, that was cruelty, and everything that's happened since then is just the bill coming due." She tried a different approach. "What do you want? Money? I'll sign whatever settlement Tom draws up. Just make this stop." "I can't make this stop. You did this to yourself, and now you have to live with the consequences. The whole town hates me. The whole town sees you clearly for the first time. There's a difference." Clara's face hardened, and for a moment I saw the real her. Not the victim she was pretending to be, but the calculating woman who'd been manipulating people for years. "You think you've won," she said. "But this isn't over. I'll find a way to make you pay for this." "Clara, you've already lost everything. What exactly do you think you can take from me now?" "We'll see." She walked back to her car, a beat-up Honda that was apparently all she could afford now that her income had disappeared. As she drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace? My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "Saw Clara leaving. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I replied. "Want to grab dinner tonight?" "Absolutely, my treat. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "Your freedom." That evening, Julia and I had dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. It felt like a real date, not just two friends commiserating about my failed marriage. Julia looked beautiful in a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. "So what's next?" she asked over dessert. Honestly, I have no idea. For the first time in 15 years, I get to make decisions based on what I want instead of what Clara will tolerate. That must be terrifying. It's liberating. Any thoughts about what you want? I looked across the table at this woman who'd stood by me through the worst period of my life, who'd helped me find the strength to fight back, who'd never asked for anything except honesty. "I'm starting to get some ideas," I said. Julia smiled. "Good. You deserve to be happy, Martin. You deserve someone who sees how wonderful you are. Is that someone you? It could be, if you're interested in finding out. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm very interested. As we walked back to my car, I felt my phone buzz with another text from Clara's number. Enjoy your little celebration. You have no idea what's coming. I showed the message to Julia, who just shook her head. She really doesn't know when to quit, does she? No, I said, deleting the message without responding. But that's about to become someone else's problem. Because tomorrow, Clara was going to learn that threatening me had been the biggest mistake of her life. The final confrontation came from an unexpected direction. Monday morning, I was reviewing lesson plans when my principal, Dr. Sarah Briggs, knocked on my classroom door. Martin, could I see you in my office? There's been a complaint filed against you. My stomach dropped. What kind of complaint? Inappropriate conduct with a parent. The complaint alleges you've been harassing a student's mother and using your position to intimidate her. I didn't need to ask who had filed the complaint. Clara had found her angle of attack. In Dr. Briggs's office, I found myself facing a formal investigation packet that painted me as an abusive husband who was now stalking his ex-wife and using my teaching position to influence community opinion against her. This is serious, Martin, Dr. Briggs said. If these allegations are substantiated, it could end your career. Dr. Briggs, with respect, have you looked into who filed this complaint? The identity of the complainant is confidential, but it's my wife, ex-wife, and everything in this complaint is a lie designed to destroy my reputation the same way I destroyed hers. Dr. Briggs studied the documents. You're saying this is retaliation? I'm saying this is Clara's last desperate attempt to hurt me, and I can prove it. I spent the next hour walking Dr. Briggs through the entire timeline, the affair, the theft, the break-in, the public Facebook meltdown. I showed her the security camera footage, the text messages, the police reports. My God, Dr. Briggs said when I finished. This woman really did all this? She did all this and more, and now she's trying to use the school system to finish what she started. What do you need from me? Time to handle this properly, and permission to use the school's resources for one final lesson. Dr. Briggs raised an eyebrow. What kind of lesson? The kind that teaches people what happens when they try to destroy innocent lives. That afternoon, I called an emergency meeting with Tom Bradley, Julia, and my sister Lisa. We gathered at Julia's house to plan what I was already thinking of as the endgame. Clara's backed herself into a corner, Tom explained. The complaint against Martin is clearly retaliatory, but it could still damage his career if we don't handle it carefully. So we don't handle it carefully, I said. We handle it decisively. What are you thinking? Julia asked. I'm thinking it's time for Clara to face the full consequences of her actions. All of them. Over the next 2 hours, we developed a plan that would either completely vindicate me or destroy us both. It was risky, but Clara had left me no choice. The plan began Wednesday morning with a call to the local newspaper. Reporter Jenny Walsh had been following the gym scandal story, and she was very interested in learning about Clara's latest allegations. So you're saying she filed false complaints with your employer? Jenny asked. I'm saying she's engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and defamation that needs to be exposed before she destroys more lives. Can you prove that? I can prove everything. The story ran Thursday morning under the headline, Local Woman's Revenge Campaign Targets Ex-Husband's Career. Jenny had done her homework, interviewing neighbors, reviewing police reports, and even tracking down some of Brent's other victims. The article painted Clara as a manipulative narcissist who had escalated from adultery to criminal behavior to false accusations when her other tactics failed. It included quotes from Mike Torino about the damage Clara and Brent had done to his business, from neighbors about Clara's harassment campaign, and from me about the impact on my teaching career. But the real bombshell came at the end of the article, an announcement that I would be holding a public meeting Thursday evening at the school to address Clara's allegations directly. You're really going to do this? Julia asked as we prepared for the meeting. Clara wanted to make this public. Now it's public. The school auditorium was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood gossip network, and it seemed like half the town had shown up to witness what everyone expected to be the final chapter in our very public divorce. Dr. Briggs introduced me with a brief statement about the school's commitment to transparency and due process. Then I took the podium and looked out at an audience that included former friends, current students, parents, neighbors, and, in the back row, Clara herself. Good evening, I began. I'm sure most of you know why we're here. My ex-wife has filed complaints alleging that I've been using my position as a teacher to harass and intimidate her. Tonight, I want to address those allegations directly. I spent the next 20 minutes methodically dismantling Clara's story. I presented the timeline of events, the evidence of her affair and theft, the documentation of her harassment campaign, and the clear pattern of escalation that had led to her false accusations. But then I did something Clara wasn't expecting. "I want to read you something," I said, pulling out my phone. "This is a text message I received from Clara yesterday after she learned about tonight's meeting." I read the message aloud. "You think you're so smart, but I've been planning this for months. I know exactly how to destroy you, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. When I'm done, you'll lose your job, your house, and your pathetic little girlfriend. You should have just given me what I wanted." The auditorium erupted in shocked murmurs. Clara's face went white as she realized what I'd just done. "Now," I continued, "I want you to ask yourselves, does this sound like a victim of harassment, or does it sound like someone engaged in a deliberate campaign of destruction?" That's when Julia stood up from her seat in the front row. "I have something to add," she said, walking to the podium. "Martin asked me not to share this, but I think everyone needs to know the full truth." She pulled out her own phone and began reading. "This is a voicemail Clara left on my phone 2 days ago. You stupid bitch. You think you can steal my husband and get away with it? I'm going to destroy both of you. I'll make sure Martin loses his job, and then I'll come after you. You have no idea who you're messing with." The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. People were shaking their heads, whispering angrily, looking at Clara with expressions of disgust and disbelief. But I still wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," I said. "Clara, I know you're here tonight. Would you like to respond to these allegations?" All eyes turned to Clara, who was trapped in the back row with no graceful way to escape. She stood up slowly, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. "This is all lies," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the silent auditorium. "Martin is an abusive, manipulative man who's turned this entire town against me. Everything he's shown you is taken out of context." "What context would justify threatening to destroy someone's career with false allegations?" I asked. "You destroyed my life first." "How? By refusing to let you cheat on me with our money? By not letting you steal from our joint accounts? By not accepting public humiliation as normal marital behavior?" Clara's composure finally cracked completely. "You think you're so perfect, but you're nothing. You're a mediocre, boring little man who teaches shop class because you're too scared to try for anything better. I settled for you, and I've regretted it every day for 15 years. The auditorium was silent. Clara looked around at the sea of shocked faces and seemed to realize what she'd just done. She started, then stopped. "Thank you, Clara," I said quietly. "I think that clarifies everything." Clara fled the auditorium, pushing past people in her rush to escape. The crowd watched her go, then turned back to me with expressions of sympathy and support. Dr. Briggs took the podium to announce that the complaint against me had been dismissed and that the school district would be reviewing its procedures for handling malicious accusations. Several parents came forward to express their support, and even some of my students who were there with their families gave me encouraging words. But the best moment came when Mrs. Dalrymple approached the podium with a petition. "Martin, dear," she said, "we've been talking, and we want you to know that this community stands behind you. We've collected signatures from over 200 neighbors expressing our support and calling for Clara to be held accountable for her actions." The petition was impressive, but what really mattered was what it represented, a community that had seen Clara's true nature and chosen to reject it. After the meeting, Julia and I walked to my car in comfortable silence. The parking lot was nearly empty, and the night air felt crisp and clean. "So," Julia said, "how does it feel to be vindicated?" "It feels like the end of a very long nightmare." "And the beginning of what?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. "The beginning of whatever we want it to be." Julia smiled and stepped closer. "I like the sound of that." As we kissed under the parking lot lights, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. My phone buzzed with a final text from Clara. "You won. Are you happy now?" I looked at the message, then at Julia, then deleted it without responding. Clara was right about one thing. I had won. But not because I'd destroyed her. I'd won because I'd finally stopped letting her destroy me. The next morning brought news that put the final period on our story. Tom Bradley called with an update that was almost too perfect to believe. "Clara's been arrested," he said. "Turns out filing false police reports and making terroristic threats are both felonies. She's looking at serious jail time." "What about Brent?" "Deported yesterday. Apparently his visa violations were more extensive than anyone realized." I hung up the phone and looked around my house. My house now, officially and completely. The divorce was finalized, Clara's appeals had been rejected, and her attempts at revenge had backfired so completely that she'd managed to incriminate herself. Julia knocked on my door an hour later, carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery. "Thought you might want to celebrate," she said, kissing me hello. "What are we celebrating?" "Your freedom, your vindication, your new life." "Our new life?" I corrected. Julia smiled. I liked the sound of that even better. As we sat on my back deck, drinking coffee and planning our future, I thought about everything that had happened. Clara had been right about one thing. I was comfortable with my life. I liked teaching. I liked my quiet neighborhood. I liked being the kind of person people could count on. What Clara had never understood was that being comfortable didn't mean being weak, and being quiet didn't mean being defenseless. She'd spent months underestimating me, convinced that I was too scared and too boring to fight back. In the end, that underestimation had cost her everything: her marriage, her reputation, her job, her freedom, and any chance of happiness. Meanwhile, I'd gained something I'd never expected: a partner who valued the same things I did, a community that respected me, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Clara had wanted to destroy me, but instead she'd freed me, and that, I realized, was the best revenge of all.